The art of disappearing. We live in a culture that is fundamentally addicted to more. If you get a promotion at work, the first thing people ask is, what's the next step? If you run a 5K, they ask when you're running a marathon. If you post a video that goes viral, the algorithm screams at you to post another one tomorrow. Momentum is the only currency that matters in the modern world. We are taught that you have to strike while the iron is hot. We are taught that if you stop running, even for a second, you will disappear. So, I want you to imagine the courage it takes to catch the biggest wave in the history of the music industry, and then just decide to get off. We spend a lot of time analyzing Adele's lyrics. We talk about her breakups, her divorce, her weight loss, her voice. But we rarely talk about the most radical thing she ever did. The most radical thing Adele ever did wasn't writing Rolling in the Deep. It wasn't winning 15 Grammys. The most radical thing she did was disappear. At the absolute peak of her fame, when she was arguably the most famous woman on the planet, she went home. She closed the door. She pulled the curtains. And she stayed there for years. To the executives in suits, this looked like madness. To the fans, it felt like abandonment. But if you have ever felt the crushing weight of burnout, if you have ever felt like your own life was becoming a performance you couldn't keep up with, then you know exactly why she did it. This is the story of why Adele walked away. And it isn't just a story about a celebrity. It is a story about the terrifying realization that sometimes the only way to save your soul is to stop doing the one thing everyone applauds you for. Chapter 1. The Monster of 2011. To understand the silence, we first have to understand the noise. Let's go back to 2011, the era of 21. It is hard to explain to people who weren't there just how suffocating that album was. It wasn't just a hit. You couldn't sit in a dentist's waiting room without hearing it. At 23 years old, Adele wasn't just a singer anymore. She was an industry. She was a single-woman stimulus package for the music business. And the demand for her was violent. People wanted a world tour. They wanted perfume lines. They wanted movie deals. They wanted her to be on the cover of every magazine every single month. For most artists, this is the dream. This is what you pray for. But for a girl from Tottenham who just wanted to sing songs about her feelings, this level of attention felt like a physical assault. Adele later described fame as toxic. She said she was frightened of it. She watched what happened to Amy Winehouse, how the media chewed her up and spit her out, and she saw her own future in that tragedy. She realized that fame is a beast that is never full. You can feed it your privacy, your sanity, and your health, and it will still ask for more. She looked at the calendar, filled with dates and obligations stretching out for years, and she felt the walls closing in. She realized that she was becoming a product, an asset to be managed, a stock price to be protected. And she knew deep down that if she didn't stop the machine was going to kill the person inside of it. Chapter 2. The anxiety nobody saw. There is a myth we tell ourselves. If you are good at something, you must love doing it. If you are a great public speaker, you must love crowds. If you are a great leader, you must love stress. And if you are one of the greatest vocalists in history, you must love the stage. But the truth about Adele is much more complicated and much more human. She doesn't just get nervous before shows. She gets terrified. She has been incredibly open about her stage fright, but we often gloss over it because she looks so confident when she sings. She has talked about throwing up before concerts. She has talked about panic attacks so severe that she once tried to escape a venue through a fire exit in Amsterdam. She has talked about the physical shaking, the nausea, the overwhelming dread that hits her before the curtain rises. Imagine that. Imagine being the best in the world at something, and that very thing makes you physically sick. This is a feeling a lot of us can relate to, even if we aren't selling out stadiums. It is that feeling of imposter syndrome that hits you when you get a promotion you aren't sure you deserve. It is the anxiety of having to present a perfect version of yourself to the world, day after day. The applause doesn't always feel like love. Sometimes the applause feels like pressure. Every time the crowd cheers, they are raising the bar. They are expecting the next note to be higher, the next song to be sadder, the next album to be better. Adele realized that her anxiety wasn't a weakness. It was a signal. It was her body's way of pulling the emergency brake. It was her nervous system screaming at her that she was not built to live in a state of constant fight or flight. Chapter 3. The day the voice broke, and then the body took over. In late 2011, right at the height of the mania, Adele's voice stopped working. She suffered a vocal hemorrhage. Basically, a blood vessel on her vocal cord popped. It is a terrifying injury for a singer. It is like a sprinter breaking their leg right before the Olympics. She had to cancel tour dates. She had to undergo risky laser surgery. But the hardest part wasn't the surgery. It was the silence. For weeks, she was medically forbidden from speaking. She had to carry around a whiteboard and write notes to communicate. She had to use an app on her phone to speak for her. For a woman who is famous for her loud, cackling laugh and her chatty personality, this silence was profound. But in that silence, something shifted. She realized that the world didn't end. She realized that the tour dates were canceled, and life went on. The money stopped flowing for a minute, and she was still okay. It was a wake-up call. It reminded her that she was mortal. It reminded her that her voice was a biological instrument, made of flesh and blood, not a magic trick that she could perform on command. We see this in our own lives all the time, don't we? We grind and grind and grind, ignoring our headaches, ignoring our fatigue, ignoring our stress, until we end up in a hospital bed, until our back gives out, until we get a migraine that blinds us for 3 days. Our bodies have a way of forcing us to rest when we refuse to take a break. For Adele, that injury was the permission slip she needed. It gave her a valid excuse to step off the treadmill. Chapter 4. The gap years. After the surgery, and after she swept the Grammys, and after she won the Oscar for Skyfall, everyone expected the victory lap. This is the part of the movie where the hero is supposed to capitalize on their success. Instead, Adele vanished. She didn't just take a vacation. She took a hiatus that lasted years. Between 21 and 25, there was a 4-year gap. Between 25 and 30, there was a 6-year gap. In the modern attention economy, where TikTok stars are born and die in 24 hours 6 years, is an eternity. Industry experts told her it was suicide. They said, "You can't go away for that long. People will forget you. You have to stay relevant." But she didn't care about relevance. She cared about reality. She decided to prioritize her private life over her public persona. She fell in love. She had a son, Angelo. She focused on being a mother. There is a quote from her that I think about all the time. She said, "I don't make music for eyes. I make music for ears." She refused to play the celebrity game. She didn't go to the opening of an envelope. She didn't launch a makeup brand. She didn't start Twitter feuds. She was spotted at the grocery store, pushing a cart, looking like a normal person. She understood something that most famous people forget. You cannot write about life if you aren't living one. If you spend every day on a tour bus or in a VIP lounge, you lose touch with the human experience. You forget what it feels like to worry about bills or to have a mundane argument about doing the dishes. And since Adele's music is powered by raw, normal, human emotion, she knew she had to go be a normal human to refill the well. Chapter 5. The Guilt of Wasted Potential. Now, I want to pause and talk about how hard it is to actually do what she did. Because stepping away sounds lovely in theory. We all fantasize about quitting our jobs and moving to the countryside. But in practice, stepping away brings up a tremendous amount of guilt. It's the guilt of wasted potential. When you have a gift, whether you are a talented coder, a brilliant teacher, or a world-class singer, You feel an obligation to use it. You feel like you owe the world your talent. Stepping back feels like you are being ungrateful. It feels like you are squandering a lottery ticket that millions of people would kill for. You can imagine the internal battle she must have fought. Who am I to say no to this? Who am I to complain about being rich and famous? Isn't this what I wanted? But she had to learn a very hard lesson. You do not owe the world your soul. She realized that she owed her fans the music, yes, but she didn't owe them her daily life. She didn't owe them her mental health. She didn't owe them access to her son. This is a boundary that many of us struggle to set in adulthood. We struggle to say no to the extra project at work because we want to be team players. We struggle to say no to family obligations because we want to be good. We are terrified that if we stop performing, people will stop loving us. Adele tested that theory. She stopped performing. She went dark. And guess what? The world waited. Chapter 6. The Return of Saturn. There is an astrological concept called the Saturn return. Adele has talked about this a lot, specifically regarding her album 30, but it applies to her whole journey. The idea is that every 27 to 30 years, the planet Saturn returns to the place it was when you were born. It's supposed to be a time of massive upheaval. It's the time when you truly grow up. It's the time when you stop doing things because you should and start doing things because you must. Her disappearances coincide with these massive shifts in her identity. She disappeared to become a mother. She disappeared to handle her divorce. She disappeared to find herself again. She treats her career not as a continuous line, but as a series of chapters. And she puts blank pages between the chapters. This is so important. We are so afraid of the blank pages. We are afraid of the gaps on our resume. We are afraid of the silence in a conversation. But Adele proved that the silence is where the magic happens. If she hadn't stepped away, she never would have experienced the heartbreak and the healing that led to Hello. She never would have had the perspective to write I Drink Wine. If she had churned out an album every year just to keep the label happy, she would have become mediocre. She would have become just another pop star. By starving the market, she made her art valuable. There is a tremendous power in scarcity. When Adele announces an album, the world stops. Why? Because we know she isn't doing it for the money. We know she isn't doing it for the clout. We know that if she is speaking, she finally has something to say. Chapter 7. JOMO, the joy of missing out. In a culture of FOMO, fear of missing out, Adele is the queen of JOMO, joy of missing out. She is the patron saint of the pause. She proved that you don't have to be on 24/7 to be successful. She proved that you can say no to the Super Bowl. You can say no to the magazine covers. You can say no to the parties. And not only will your career survive, but you will survive. She prioritized her son's childhood over her own ego. She prioritized her vocal cords over the ticket sales. She chose the long game. And I think that resonates with us so deeply because we are all so tired. We are tired of the hustle. We are tired of the grind. We are tired of the notification badges on our phones. When we see Adele walking away from the spotlight, we don't just feel respect. We feel envy, and we feel relief. She is living proof that you can step off the treadmill without falling on your face. A question for you. I want to leave you with a thought today, and it's a question that might be a little uncomfortable to answer. We all have a stage in our lives, a place where we feel we have to perform, a place where we feel the pressure to say yes when we want to say no. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a social expectation. If you could step away from one part of your life right now just for a month or a year without any consequences, what would it be? What is the thing that is draining you, that you keep doing just because you are afraid of what will happen if you stop? And what is the fear that is keeping you there? Let's talk about it in the comments. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to keep singing. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is put the mic down, walk off the stage, and go home.